Welcome to Books and More Audio, a channel dedicated to sharing life-changing ideas from the world's most inspiring books. In this episode, we explore The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen R. Covey, a timeless guide that has transformed millions of lives around the globe. This book reveals how true success begins from within, by mastering yourself before influencing others. Through 7 powerful habits, Covey shows us how to live with purpose, integrity, and balance, achieving not just success, but lasting fulfillment and peace in every area of life. Introduction: From the Inside Out. When I began my journey of understanding what makes people truly effective, I discovered that our perception of success had shifted dramatically over time. In the early days of human progress, success was built on what I call the character ethic, principles like integrity, humility, courage, justice, and patience. These timeless values form the foundation of trust and effectiveness. But over the past century, society has gradually drifted toward the personality ethic, a focus on image, technique, and quick fixes. People learned how to appear successful rather than how to become genuinely effective. We became experts in managing impressions, but not in mastering ourselves. Through years of teaching, leading, and observing others, I came to a simple yet powerful realization. True change begins from within. It doesn't start with trying to change our circumstances or manipulate others. It starts by changing our own paradigms, the lenses through which we see the world. Our paradigms shape our perceptions, and our perceptions shape our actions. When we see differently, we act differently. That's why I call this an inside-out approach to effectiveness. Being effective is not about doing more. It's about doing what matters most. It's about aligning our daily choices with the principles that govern lasting success. If you want better relationships, greater influence, and deeper fulfillment, you must first improve the one thing you can truly control: yourself. Each time you take responsibility for your reactions instead of blaming others, you begin to exercise the freedom that defines human dignity, the ability to choose your own response. The 7 habits I introduce in this book are not quick tips or superficial strategies. They are universal principles, self-evident truths that apply across cultures, professions, and generations. These habits form a natural progression of personal growth. The first 3 habits lead to private victory, mastering yourself and gaining independence. The next 3 lead to public victory, learning to work effectively with others through trust, respect, and mutual benefit. The final habit, sharpen the saw, sustains all the others through continuous renewal, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. We live in a fast-paced world obsessed with speed and appearance, yet starving for meaning and depth. The principles in this book are not about keeping up with the world. They are about grounding yourself in what never changes. When you live by principles, you move with stability in an unstable world. The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People is more than a book about success. It is a map for living a life of purpose, integrity, and inner peace. It invites you to pause, reflect, and begin the most important journey of all: the journey inward, where every lasting change begins. Part 1: Paradigms and Principles. The Inside-Out Approach to Lasting Effectiveness. When I began studying the literature on success, I noticed a profound shift that had taken place over the past 2 centuries. The early writings, especially those from the 19th century, focused on what I call the character ethic, the idea that true success grows from integrity, humility, courage, and justice. These qualities were not techniques, they were principles, natural laws that govern human relationships and personal growth. But somewhere along the way, especially in the 20th century, the focus moved toward the personality ethic, on charm, image, and quick-fix formulas for success. People became obsessed with how to look effective instead of how to be effective. We learned to manipulate situations instead of mastering ourselves. It became clear to me that this surface-level approach could never bring deep or lasting change. True effectiveness flows from inside out, from the character, from our deepest paradigms, from the way we see the world. A paradigm is more than a habit of thought. It is the map through which we interpret every experience. If the map is wrong, no amount of effort will take us to the right destination. Real transformation doesn't happen when we simply change our behavior. It happens when we change the map we are using to navigate life. Each of us carries paradigms, assumptions about ourselves, others, and the world that shape how we think, feel, and act. Two people can face the same situation and react in completely different ways simply because they see it differently. The way we see determines the way we act. For example, when I heard a man on the subway ignoring his noisy children, I initially judged him as careless and inconsiderate. But when I learned that their mother had just died, my paradigm shifted instantly. My feelings, my attitude, and even my behavior transformed. Not because the situation changed, but because my perception changed. That is the power of a paradigm shift. In the same way, when we want to change our lives, we often focus on the outside. We try to change our behavior, our results, our circumstances, without realizing that these are only the fruits, not the roots. The roots are our paradigms, our character, and the principles we live by. Until we change from the inside, any external change will only be temporary. This is the essence of the inside-out approach. If we want to improve our relationships, we must become more understanding and trustworthy. If we want greater freedom, we must learn self-discipline. If we want to be respected, we must first live with integrity. In other words, to change the world around us, we must first change the world within us. Principles are timeless truths that operate regardless of culture or circumstance. They are like the laws of gravity. We can ignore them, but we cannot escape their effects. When our actions are aligned with principles such as fairness, honesty, responsibility, and respect, we create stability and growth. When we violate them, no amount of cleverness can compensate for the loss of trust and balance. Principles are the compass that guide us when the storms of life arrive. The first part of the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People lays this foundation. Before we can talk about habits, we must understand that habits grow out of character. A habit is formed by the intersection of 3 elements: knowledge, skill, and desire. Knowledge tells us what to do, skill shows us how to do it, and desire gives us the motivation to do it. Only when all 3 are present can a new habit take root. These 7 habits represent a natural progression of human growth. We move through 3 stages of maturity: dependence, independence, and interdependence. Dependence is the stage of you. You take care of me. You are responsible for my life. Independence is the stage of I. I can do it myself. I am responsible for my choices. Interdependence is the stage of we. Together, we can accomplish far more than any of us alone. True maturity comes when we move from dependence to independence and finally to interdependence, because life's greatest results come through cooperation, not isolation. The first 3 habits, be proactive, begin with the end in mind, and put first things first, are the habits of private victory, helping us achieve independence. The next 3, think win-win, seek first to understand, then to be understood, and synergize, are the habits of public victory, helping us build interdependence and deep relationships. The final habit, sharpen the saw, renews and sustains all the others. Before we can experience public victories, we must first achieve private victories. You cannot lead others if you cannot lead yourself. You cannot expect trust if your own character is unsteady. Personal effectiveness is the foundation of every kind of success, in leadership, in relationships, in contribution. It is the daily practice of aligning who we are with the principles that never change. In this part of the book, I invite readers to look deeply at their paradigms, to question not only what they see, but how they see. Because as long as we cling to flawed perceptions, no external improvement can last. But when we choose to live by timeless principles, we tap into a source of strength that is far greater than circumstances. Ultimately, effectiveness is not about speed or technique. It's about character and vision. It's about living by design, not by default. When we learn to work from the inside out, grounded in principles, guided by purpose, we stop reacting to life and start creating it. That is where all lasting growth begins, and that is the essence of Part 1. Paradigms and Principles, the foundation for everything that follows in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Part 2. Private Victory. Mastering yourself before leading others. True effectiveness begins within. Before we can lead, influence, or work harmoniously with others, we must first learn to lead ourselves. The second part of the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, the Private Victory, is about personal mastery. It teaches us how to move from dependence to independence, from being shaped by circumstances to shaping them through conscious choice. The 3 habits that form this foundation, be proactive, begin with the end in mind, and put first things first, are the habits of self-governance, personal leadership, and disciplined action. Habit 1. Be proactive. Between stimulus and response lies a space, and in that space lies our greatest power, the freedom to choose. That idea changed everything for me. Human beings are not products of their environment. We are products of our choices. While animals react instinctively to stimuli, we can pause, reflect, and respond based on values instead of moods or conditions. This ability gives us the power to create our own destiny. Proactive people focus their energy on the things they can influence, their circle of influence, rather than wasting it on things they cannot control, their circle of concern. Reactive people, on the other hand, complain, blame, and wait for circumstances to change. But the truth is, we change our world by changing ourselves first. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist who survived Nazi concentration camps, taught me this lesson profoundly. Despite losing everything, his family, his freedom, his dignity, he discovered that no one could take away his last human freedom, to choose his attitude in any given circumstance. That realization gave him power in the midst of powerlessness. Likewise, when we choose to be proactive, we stop being victims of fate and become creators of our own lives. Being proactive doesn't mean being aggressive or pushy. It means taking responsibility, the ability to respond. It's recognizing that I am the creative force of my life. Our behavior is a product of our decisions, not our conditions. When we live this truth, we stop saying I can't and start saying I choose. Habit 2. Begin with the end in mind. Once we accept responsibility for our choices, the next step is to decide what we are choosing for. Habit 2 is about vision, about living by design instead of by default. Everything is created twice, first in the mind, then in reality. If you don't make the first creation consciously, someone else will do it for you. I often ask people to imagine attending their own funeral. What would you want your family, friends, and colleagues to say about you? What kind of person would you want to be remembered as? This simple exercise reveals your deepest values and helps you define your personal mission. To begin with the end in mind means to identify what truly matters and align your daily actions with that purpose. Without a clear vision, we get lost in activity, climbing fast but up the wrong ladder. With a vision, every step we take gains meaning. It is not about setting endless goals, it's about defining who you are and why you do what you do. A personal mission statement acts as a compass. It gives direction when life becomes chaotic and helps you make decisions based on principle rather than emotion. The most effective people I know live by a clear sense of purpose. They are not driven by the demands of the moment, but guided by the clarity of their values. When your life is centered on correct principles, not possessions, pleasure, or people's approval, you achieve peace and power. You no longer live reactively, chasing external validation, but act intentionally from the inside out. Habit 3. Put first things first. If habit 2 is about leadership, deciding what matters most, then habit 3 is about management, executing on those priorities. It is the habit of discipline, focus, and integrity in action. We often confuse urgency with importance. Many people spend their lives reacting to the loudest demands, emails, deadlines, crises, while neglecting the quiet but crucial activities that sustain long-term success: health, relationships, personal growth. To help clarify this, I use a time management matrix divided into 4 quadrants. Quadrant 1, urgent and important, crises, pressing problems, deadlines. Quadrant 2, important but not urgent, planning, prevention, relationship building, self-renewal. Quadrant 3, urgent but not important, interruptions, unnecessary meetings, trivial demands. Quadrant 4, not urgent and not important, distractions, time wasters, excessive entertainment. Effective people focus most of their time in Quadrant 2, investing in the future before it becomes a crisis. This is where real effectiveness is built. But it requires courage, the courage to say no to the unimportant so that we can say yes to what truly matters. Putting first things first is about self-management, living according to your priorities rather than impulses. It's about organizing life around your deepest values, not around the expectations of others. The difference between successful and struggling people is not the number of hours they have, but how they use them. To practice this habit, you must balance willpower to act on what matters and integrity to stay true to it. You can't manage time, you can only manage yourself, your energy, focus, and commitments. When your actions align with your purpose, every day becomes a deliberate expression of who you want to be. The essence of private victory. These first 3 habits together represent the foundation of all effectiveness. Be proactive gives you the freedom to choose your response. Begin with the end in mind gives you the vision to direct your choices. Put first things first gives you the discipline to make those choices real. Together, they create private victory, mastery over self. Before you can win in the public world, you must first win the inner battle. If you cannot keep promises to yourself, you will struggle to earn trust from others. True independence is not about isolation, but about self-control, the ability to govern your own thoughts, emotions, and actions according to principle. The private victory is quiet and invisible, but it is the root from which all visible success grows. You cannot build a great life on a weak foundation. By developing these 3 habits, you gain self-respect, confidence, and clarity, the kind that no external praise or success can ever replace. In mastering yourself, you prepare to work effectively with others. Private victory is the inward journey that precedes every outward achievement. And only those who have conquered themselves are truly free to create, to lead, and to live with purpose. Part 3. Public Victory. From independence to interdependence, building trust and lasting relationships. Once we achieve personal mastery through the first 3 habits, we reach a new level of maturity: interdependence. Independence may bring strength, but interdependence brings greatness. Life's most meaningful achievements depend on working effectively with others, in families, organizations, and communities. The public victory is about moving from self-mastery to mutual success, from I to we. The next 3 habits, think win-win, seek first to understand, then to be understood, and synergize, are the foundation of powerful relationships built on trust, respect, and cooperation. Habit 4. Think win-win. For many people, life feels like a competition. If one person wins, another must lose. But win-lose thinking is based on scarcity, the belief that success is limited, that someone else's achievement diminishes our own. Win-win, however, comes from a paradigm of abundance, the understanding that there is enough for everyone, that collaboration produces greater results than competition ever could. Win-win is not a soft or sentimental approach. It's a principle of courage and consideration. It means having the integrity to stand for what's right while respecting the needs of others. It requires maturity, the balance between self-confidence and empathy. It's not about compromise, where both sides give up something, but about creative cooperation, where both sides gain something better than they imagined. When you adopt the win-win mindset, you stop seeing relationships as transactions and start seeing them as partnerships. In business, this might mean building trust with clients instead of exploiting them. In family life, it might mean listening to your children and creating solutions together rather than imposing your authority. Win-win is not a technique, but a way of thinking that values relationships over short-term victories. It says, I want success, but not at your expense. Let's succeed together. Habit 5. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. This habit is the key to effective communication, and communication is the foundation of all relationships. Most people listen with the intent to reply, not to understand. We filter everything we hear through our own experiences, judgments, and emotions. But when we listen only to respond, we miss the deeper meaning behind people's words. Empathic listening, listening with the intent to truly understand, requires us to step into another person's world, to see through their eyes, feel through their heart, and hear through their ears. It's not about agreeing with them, it's about genuinely understanding them. Once people feel understood, they lower their defenses and open themselves to your influence. Only then can real dialogue and real problem-solving begin. I have seen this principle heal broken relationships, rebuild trust, and transform workplaces. In one case, a father constantly argued with his teenage son, each trying to prove the other wrong. When the father decided to just listen, to ask questions, to feel rather than fix, the dynamic changed completely. The son finally felt heard, and in that moment, his heart softened. The father's influence grew not because he spoke more, but because he listened better. To communicate effectively, you must first seek to understand. Only then should you seek to be understood. The order matters. True influence begins with empathy, not persuasion. Habit 6. Synergize. Synergy is the culmination of all the habits, the result of mutual trust, respect, and creative cooperation. It means that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. In synergy, differences are not obstacles, they are opportunities. When two people think alike, one of them is unnecessary. Real growth happens when diverse perspectives collide and combine into something new and better. Synergy is not about avoiding conflict, but transforming it into a source of creativity. It requires openness, the willingness to truly value the differences in people, differences in opinion, background, and style. Where there is trust, those differences become fuel for innovation. Without trust, they become threats. I have seen synergy turn struggling teams into high-performing ones. When people stop competing and start complementing each other's strengths, miracles happen. One person's weakness becomes irrelevant when another person's strength fills the gap. Together, they create something neither could achieve alone. That is the essence of synergy. 1 + 1 = 3 or more. In personal life, synergy might mean turning arguments into understanding or finding creative ways to meet everyone's needs without sacrifice. In organizations, it means fostering a culture where ideas flow freely and collaboration replaces hierarchy. Synergy thrives where people value principle over ego. The essence of public victory. The private victory makes you capable. The public victory makes you valuable. It teaches you that relationships are the true measure of effectiveness. You cannot build trust if you lack integrity, and you cannot collaborate if you lack confidence. But when personal strength meets empathy, when self-mastery meets respect for others, great things happen. The progression of maturity continues. Dependence is the paradigm of you, independence is the paradigm of I, and interdependence is the paradigm of we. The public victory represents this final stage, the ability to live, work, and lead effectively with others. You cannot fake your way to interdependence. It grows naturally from character. Win-win requires integrity. Empathic listening requires humility. Synergy requires trust. Together, they form a pattern of effectiveness that transcends mere success. In the end, life is not a competition, but a collaboration. The greatest achievements, the most enduring happiness, and the deepest fulfillment come when people work together in harmony, guided by principles, united by purpose, and inspired by mutual respect. That is the heart of the public victory, the victory we achieve together. Part 4. Renewal. Sharpen the saw, the principle of continuous growth and balance. After mastering the habits of personal and public victory, we must remember that effectiveness is not a static state. It must be renewed continually. That is the essence of the 7th habit, sharpen the saw. This final habit is about self-renewal, the habit that sustains all others. Just as a woodcutter must pause to sharpen his saw instead of mindlessly hacking at trees with a dull blade, we too must take time to restore our energy, strength, and clarity if we want to live and lead effectively in the long term. Sharpening the saw means investing in yourself, physically, mentally, spiritually, and socially. It's about keeping your greatest asset, you, in peak condition. Many people try to achieve success by working harder and harder until they burn out. But effectiveness isn't about endless effort, it's about balanced renewal. When we neglect one dimension of our lives, all others eventually suffer. 1. Physical renewal, caring for the body. The physical dimension is the foundation of all energy. It includes exercise, nutrition, rest, and stress management. Our bodies are the instruments through which we act in the world. When we neglect them, we weaken our ability to think clearly and act decisively. Physical renewal isn't just about appearance or fitness, it's about respecting the body as a vehicle for purpose. Regular exercise strengthens endurance, sharpens focus, and builds discipline. Proper nutrition fuels the body efficiently, and adequate rest restores it. When we care for the body, we signal to ourselves that we value life and are committed to living it fully. The difference between those who sustain effectiveness and those who burn out often lies in how well they renew their physical energy. 2. Mental renewal, expanding the mind. The mind is like a muscle. It grows stronger with use and weaker with neglect. Mental renewal comes through continuous learning, reflection, and imagination. Reading great books, writing, analyzing ideas, or even engaging in deep conversation keeps the intellect alive. Too often, people stop learning after formal education, believing that knowledge is a phase instead of a lifelong pursuit. But in reality, the moment we stop learning, we start declining. To sharpen the mind means to challenge it, to feed it with truth and creativity rather than the noise and trivia of modern life. When we invest time in study, reflection, and meaningful thought, we build the intellectual resilience needed to face complexity. The mind, like the body, must be exercised daily to stay sharp and strong. 3. Spiritual renewal, the core of inner peace. The spiritual dimension is the deepest part of human nature, the source of meaning, purpose, and inner strength. It's what anchors us when the storms of life arrive. Spiritual renewal does not necessarily come from religion, though for many it does. It comes from living in harmony with timeless principles and taking time to reconnect with what truly matters. We sharpen our spiritual saw when we meditate, pray, or simply spend quiet time in reflection or nature. These moments of solitude allow us to realign with our core values and remember why we do what we do. The spiritual dimension gives direction to all the others. It provides the why behind our actions. Without it, even the most successful life can feel hollow. I often retreat into solitude to reflect on my life's purpose and to renew my sense of vision. Every person needs moments of stillness, a pause to reconnect with conscience and principle. That is how the inner compass stays true. 4. Social and emotional renewal, nurturing relationships. The The social and emotional dimensions are closely linked because our emotions are deeply influenced by the quality of our relationships. Humans are social beings. We grow through connection. Strengthening this dimension means practicing the habits of public victory: empathy, respect, cooperation, and service. When we invest in others through listening, encouraging, forgiving, and understanding, we renew both them and ourselves. Emotional health flourishes in an environment of trust and love. Service, in particular, is one of the most powerful forms of renewal. When we lose ourselves in helping others, we often find our own purpose again. Too many people pursue personal success while neglecting relationships, only to discover later that achievement without connection feels empty. Renewal in this dimension means keeping the heart open, maintaining balance between independence and interdependence. The balance of renewal. Sharpening the saw is not something we do once in a while. It is a continuous process. Each day, we must nurture all 4 dimensions. If you exercise your body but neglect your mind, you become physically strong but intellectually stagnant. If you develop your mind but neglect your spirit, you may be smart but lack peace. True renewal happens when these 4 areas are integrated, when your actions, thoughts, emotions, and purpose all move in harmony. This balance is what sustains long-term effectiveness. Without renewal, even the best habits eventually wear down. But with renewal, we find resilience, adaptability, and creative energy. We become more than efficient, we become alive. Returning to the inside-out path. Sharpening the saw brings us back to where the journey began: inside-out growth. When we take time to renew, we reconnect with the principles that govern all 7 habits. We remember that effectiveness is not a destination, but a lifelong journey, a cycle of growth, reflection, and renewal. In the end, the 7 habits of highly effective people is not about doing more, but about becoming more. The final habit reminds us that life's greatest success is not in what we achieve, but in how we continue to grow. Physically strong, mentally clear, emotionally balanced, and spiritually grounded. When we sharpen the saw regularly, we sustain the energy and wisdom to keep living, learning, and serving with purpose every single day.